Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Apartment Department, a podcast for multifamily marketers by multifamily marketers. I am here, as always, with Chris, and we are going to talk about the AIM 2024 conference today. We both attended. We both were fortunate enough to be able to speak in a session together, which we'll talk about in a minute. But we wanted to go ahead and do a recap of our impressions of the conference and what themes. Something I've noticed about AIM is every year there are always several key themes. And so we wanted to talk about the themes that stuck out to us, and we'll go from there. So, Chris, first of all, AIM, you went years ago, and then this was your first AIM in a while since that last visit. So I wanted to ask you, what did you think? How had AIM changed in the years since you first attended?
When I first started attending AIM, we had about 500 people, maybe 550 attend. Same location, but just a lot different. It was a newer conference. People were still learning about how we want to be marketers within, and innovate and use all of the digital tools that we have today. And then, I come all these years later, and what a huge difference. I mean, the vendors that were there were first class. The organization was great. The connections that we were able to make were amazing. It was organized. And the topics, I think the topics are the biggest piece. Speakers are prepared. The topics are great. People want to learn. And that's my biggest takeaway from AIM this year. And I was joking that I've sent my employees to AIM, right? I know it's a great conference. We need to have people there. But after the experience this year, I'm definitely going back next year because it was just so good to just see people in person, talk to the people Our industry is so small. It was great to catch up. And AIM is just doing such a great job of organizing the conference to make it valuable for all of us who attend.
I agree with you. I mean, I can't even describe. I spent time with a woman who I met last year, and we kept in touch and we were able to spend time together this year. I met a bunch of new people who now I'm connected with through LinkedIn and various other groups. And so that was the thing. One of the things that I was looking forward to most was who else can I meet and how else can I connect with them? Because you're right, we're all marketers in similar situations, and to be able to come together and really have that collective experience is just unbelievable. I almost wish it's almost like there's not enough time in the day because you want to go to all the sessions, but then you want to spend time with your vendor partners or other people. Something I like too is that you meet people from different geographies, and so you just get a sense of what's going on in the United States and Canada. I met some people from Canada in terms of apartment marketing and challenges we're facing and successes we're having. What was one of your key, if you had to say, okay, this was what I really, latched onto from AIM, what was something that was really intriguing to you that you're going to go back to your organization with and think about implementing?
So when I think about marketing, especially when I'm on tighter budgets, I think about ways that we can be different and maybe be found. And sometimes it takes a little bit of extra time to do and implement, but to do something different than our competitors. And so I really latched on to the digital content pieces that I was part of. How do you make content that matters where the search engines will pick it up, meaning Google, even Bing now is making a run because of ChatGPT and their partnership. But how do you be a little bit different and use some of the tools that have been there for a while, some of them are new, to be able to put that into your marketing program, but do it in a way that's intentional and smart. You can't just launch everything at once. You can't be good at everything. Of course, there's tried and true methods that we all use for our SEO and digital marketing. But one piece that I thought was really interesting is using Reddit. And I'm not saying Reddit as a content creator, because I think to have Reddit rank is pretty hard. You have to get your karma up and people have to trust you. But what you can use Reddit for is to see if people are talking about your apartment community or other apartment communities in the cities that you're owning and operating in. And I thought that was pretty interesting. So that's something that we've been doing, is kind of scouring Reddit. What are people saying out there? Just to get a sense of, can we change our marketing a little bit? Do we need to tweak something? Are people talking about us? Are they not? And so I thought that that was a nice little nugget for me. Of course, TikTok came up. I think TikTok is an interesting tool, and it does rank in Google, but you'd have to really be committed to it. I know you've done some testing on TikTok if you want to talk about that. We haven't done it yet. We've let our teams kind of run with it with our approval, but we haven't done any intentional branding from the corporate side down to TikTok.
Yeah, TikTok. So going back, Reddit is interesting. And we have actually found sometimes conversation threads regarding our communities. And so you're right, it is out there. And to be aware of the conversations that are happening about your communities is huge. TikTok's an interesting one. During the pandemic, some of our communities wanted to try it out, and we kind of went back and forth in terms of we wanted to have a centralized channel, one for our corporate brand that then all of our properties could utilize to create videos and post them about their communities. The communities wanted to have individual channels that they could control and had their own brand. And so ultimately, the communities who wanted to ended up creating their own brands and then providing us with the username and password so that, if someone left or whatever, we had access to those channels. But it it requires, like you said, time and a dedicated person and someone who's interested in TikTok. And so now we just kind of have assets that are hanging out there that aren't really being used, which is too bad. But I think one day we'll need to revisit and figure out how to make that a viable solution, because you can get a lot of eyeballs on TikTok. But we've also tested out some ads through rent.com on TikTok, and I'll have to go back and look at how those performed and talk about those in another session, because I think some of the vendors are now, providing solutions at least to advertise, so that it's taking away that problem of the constant content creation, but you're still getting exposure on the channel.
I think that's the thing with any of these, though, and that's why I always take the approach of crawl, walk, run, because to do any of these right, you have to take the time to do it. You can't, in my opinion, you can't just throw stuff up there, do it for a little bit, and then stop. And that's what my hesitation on TikTok has been, because you have to create so much content, and it has to be relevant content and kind of live content. And so that's why I'm taking my time on it. But the session was interesting because it wasn't just about TikTok and Reddit, but it was about all the things you can do with SEO to just, look at your keywords. What, we all know the keywords that are probably ranking, but what are some low-hanging fruit keywords that maybe you could go after that competitors aren't? That'll help you in some of those sub searches. Making sure your Google profile is up to date and you're, optimized there, because Google is so important, right? Just the little things, the little reminders on what we can do for content to really drive home our strategy and being found. Especially, at my last company, all I did was lease ups, and there was a lot of conversation about getting your Google profile even verified. It's so hard these days. So some tips and tricks there on what you can do, because even the video, they do videos now, and sometimes they don't accept the videos. And so it's just an interesting session in general, just talking about how you can really, start off early, use video, use keywords, have a landing page. This would work for takeovers too, if you haven't rebranded yet. It was just a great session on some things to do. And for me, the takeaways was figuring out some of the low hanging fruit items that maybe your competitors aren't doing. And maybe that is a little bit of TikTok. Maybe that is using Reddit. Maybe that is using a blog site and having that content or RSS feeds. Even they talked about podcasts and how you can do a podcast for a company and push that out, because RSS feeds are coming back and are pretty big and are part of the algorithm these days. So it was an interesting session altogether on content. And I learned a lot. I took away a lot from it, things that I hadn't thought about maybe in a while.
I think that's interesting how all this stuff is cyclical. I sat in a session that was similar but different. It was really talking about preparing for search generative experience. And I don't know if you're opted in to the Gemini option on your phone on Google search, where basically it will create a generative AI paragraph about whatever you're searching for. And so the session was really about, how do you prepare for that experience? How do you make sure that all of the information about your communities is consistent and holistic and as rich as possible in order to feed the generative search information that it needs. And something that they talked about was the idea of, with the generative search, long tail searches are coming back. People are like asking questions. I think for a while we kind of got trained as searchers to search in the shortest way possible. And they talked a lot now about how search trends are shifting. And it just cracked me up because I remember years and years ago, optimize for the long-tailed search. That's really where the low-hanging fruit is, and that's really where you're going to get your most quality visitors. And so to have that come full circle was fascinating to me. But that was something that was really interesting. Those sessions focused a lot on video creation for things that searchers want to know. So one of the examples was having an FAQ page on your website, which I know is something that you really believe in because it answers a lot of common questions that searchers have. But the suggestion there was not only should you have an FAQ page, you should also have a video about each of those FAQs. And so I liked that idea because, for example, if you have an FAQ, what is your pet policy? And that pet policy is the same across your entire portfolio. Well, then you only have to make one video to address that FAQ, and it can be used across multiple assets because video in general, a lot of it is prohibitive because of cost. And then, oh my gosh, do I have to create like video content for each of my communities? But to be able to find a way to consolidate video creation so that it can be used, one video can be used across multiple assets while preparing for this search generative experience, that really stuck out to me. And so, I don't know, I was excited about that. The other trend that stuck out to me that I'm bringing back and thinking about already was the idea of branding and really how an investment in branding and customer experience can really increase your return as a community. I think branding a lot of times is thought of as this kind of like fluffy idea. That sounds bad, but a woman from Hampton by Hilton, Shruti, talked a lot about how them building out the brand of Hampton, they've been able to tie that back to actual financial key performance indicators. And we both love data and KPIs. That's entirely what our session was about at AIM. And I really latched on to this idea of how do you take the idea of brand and make it tangible. And she talked a lot about creating playbooks, brand playbooks, not logo typeface, textures, colors, but what experience can every resident and prospect expect when they walk into a property, a property managed property. And I love the idea.
Well, hotels have been doing this for a long time, and apartment communities haven't. And some of that is just due to our nature of our business and maybe how we have viewed our customers in the past, that they may be moving all the time. But if you think about it, having a brand and being able to anticipate what our residents want is huge, especially now as we have so many more renters by choice. I was a renter by choice for 10 years. And the reason why I would stay places is because of how I was treated, right? It wasn't just the apartment. It was the overall feel of the staff and the community, the amenities, the extra little things that they may or may not be doing. I mean, way back when I worked at Lewis, this was way before any of this became popular. We would water plants for people when they left, if they went on vacation, they told us. We would do little things like that just the extra touch that makes you want to stay at your community and create that brand and be the one that people go to first in the market, right? When they hear your name.
I think that's fascinating because especially if you're at a company that has multiple properties across multiple states, that if you can retain a resident, it's okay if they want to move, right? But if you can retain them and move them into a different property that you manage because of the experience, and they want to do that because they've had a great experience with you, that is huge. I actually came back and I started thinking about, okay, well, what across our portfolio are residents saying they enjoy most, and how can we use that data to start really building what does our brand mean to our residents, our overall property management brand, and then how can that be infused into each of our apartment communities, things that already exist, obviously, because people are saying that they appreciate it, but how can we consciously infuse them? Some of the things that I found, well, first, customer service, and that lends into exactly what you just said, those little things like watering plants for someone, that's the ultimate. It's easy, but it's the ultimate customer service. It makes people feel safe. Another thing that I noticed that people appreciated about living at our properties was the speed in which their issues were addressed. So they didn't really mind that there were issues as long as they were addressed speedily and well. And then the other thing that I noticed was appearance and cleanliness. So how did they feel when they were in the community, when they were in the building? So you can tell I'm really taking this idea and running with it, but I got to spend time with Shruti at a round table in the morning. There were probably 12 of us in the room, and I felt so fortunate to be able to spend time with her. And just, I don't know, that was honestly worth the entire conference, being able to go to that round table with her and pick her brain and then hear what other people, other marketers were saying as well. So that was my big takeaway was brand. How are we making people feel? And then how can we consciously put that back into the communities so that one, we're building a property management brand, but also so that we're providing consistent experience across all of our communities.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's all about consistency and trust and elevating what you can. You know, there's some communities that you can really knock out the events and have a bunch of cool stuff going, but you don't always need a bunch of money to create consistency and to create a brand, as long as you can do what you can within the budget and make your residents feel welcome. That's all that matters. I mean, we had an event the other day. It was like a coloring contest for some of the kids in the community with their parents, and they loved it. That didn't cost a lot of money, but it brought everybody together, and it was in the community, and it brings the community together. And if you know your neighbors, you're less likely to move. I mean, then your retention rates are better and everything comes together, but it has to be intentional, and you have to do it with a purpose, and you have to be consistent. So that's a great takeaway from this conference. I think the apartment brand is changing and trying to become more like hotels, again, who have been doing it forever, right? Because they have to.
Yeah, there was another interesting session I didn't attend, but I looked at the deck, and it was basically showing popular logos. And then people were guessing like, well, what logo is this based on the silhouette or whatever? And guess what? If you have a strong brand, people know what that is. And that is so powerful. But you're right. Other industries have thought about this, and multifamily has talked about it, but it's time for us to start doing it, to take lead from some of these other industries. So I'm excited. I'll report back once I get excited. I have a whole Word document kind of written up about building a soft brand. That's what they called it, because each of our apartment communities has its own brand, but then they live under our property management brand. Hilton has something similar. They have a brand called Curio, where each of the hotels in that kind of brand have their own name, etc., but they're under this Hilton brand. And so I think that sounded like the best fit for how we manage kind of our property names underneath our property management name. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how far I can take this and run with it, but I'm excited. Do you have any other, so we spoke, right? We had a session, which was amazing. That was a dream come true for you. I know that was a goal of mine after attending last year. I said, I'm definitely going to speak at this conference. So talk to me a little bit about the session and some of the feedback you got afterwards.
Oh, it was amazing. I love the prep that we got. Again, AIM first class, allowing us to have a couple of months to practice, get to know each other, talk about what the session really needs to be and the key takeaways. And I think all of that culminated into a really good session. The feedback I've gotten is people learned and they took something back from it, which is great. That's what we want to do. And you're right. It was a dream for me to get up on stage. I remember thinking back, I think I went to the second or third year of AIM and thinking, wow, this is so amazing to see these people up here talking about what they're doing in marketing and to hear them. And then there I was doing the same thing all these years later. And that was amazing for me. But I think our session went well, and I think we captivated the audience, and I think we gave them a real takeaway, something that they could go back and use. And I've heard that people are already doing that, which is pretty amazing. What about you? Have you heard any feedback?
Yeah, I mean, same. I listened to one recap online, and the discussion specifically referenced our session, which was, aligning marketing and operations through shared KPIs, which you're exactly right. The purpose was to give people, we gave everyone examples of KPIs that we love. We gave everyone a list of marketing and operations aligned KPIs that they could take back to their company and use. And that's exactly what I've heard that people are doing, is that each person latched on to a KPI or KPIs that made sense for their organization, right? But yeah, I've heard that people are already going back and looking at the KPIs that we talked about and figuring out how to incorporate them into their day-to-day work lives in order to align both groups. And so I think mission accomplished. And I think you're right. Kudos to AIM, because I didn't realize that as an attendee. They want this conference to be the best. And so the amount of investment that they put into ensuring that their speakers are prepared and that the content that goes up is, world-class, top-notch, is we put in a lot of time in order to prepare, but one, it was worth it. And two, it ensures that the conference is a great experience. So I'm very glad that we got to do that. I think our session aligned with kind of this general theme of data that existed at the conference, talking about data silos, how to use data to implement human touches, how to use data to identify what amenities kind of residents want. So yeah, it was really great, and I'm happy we got to be there. And I'm happy that each of us was able to come back from the conference with something that we're really going to take and run with in our own organizations.
I totally agree. It was fantastic to be there and just talk to everybody and be part of that and make a difference. And even if it was just one or two people's way of thinking with marketing, for me, that's all it takes to make it successful. And I know we did that. And this is great as always. Thanks for the conversation. Thanks for being on stage with me at AIM. We want to thank our producer, Carlos Marquez.
Carlos, I know we've never shouted him out before. Thank you, Carlos, for making this podcast sound amazing. And we appreciate you. Thank you, everyone, for joining the Apartment Department and our AIM 2024 recap. We hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you.